Hello and welcome to this video tutorial from BlenderCookie.com. My name is Jonathan Williamson, and today we're going to do a hard surface modeling exercise by creating a shipping container. Now the shipping container that I'm talking about is one similar to what you can see in this picture here. It's just a pretty standard thing that, things are shipped across country and across the world and so on. But it represents a really good exercise in hard surface modeling, as we have all these different forms in here on the doors, then along the side we've got all these different ridges. Really give us a good chance to use a variety of modifiers, from the array modifier to the mirror modifiers, use some creasing and so on. So first off, let me give props to the reference provider, and these come from a super3.org. He released this set of reference images for the shipping containers under a Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license, I believe. Yeah, as you can see right here, 3.0 unported. So you can feel free to use them for pretty much anything. Just, attribute things back to him. So thanks to him as the provider of the references. So we're going to go ahead and use those different references that we have, and if I scroll through them, you can see all the different ones that we've got. Got a lot of different ones with great detail on them, so we can really see all the different aspects. Now we're going to do this tutorial in two parts. So this first part, we're just going to lay out the main structure and do the details on the sides and the back and the top, and then we'll do the door and anything else left in part two. So let's go ahead and get started. So over here in Blender, the first thing that I want to do is to go ahead and set up just basically a reference object for the size of our entire container. And the size of this is actually going to be pretty standard. These come in several different sizes, but the size that we're going to use, based on what I can see from the picture and having looked up the actual dimensions of these, is we're going to use in English, or the American system, 19 feet long, 10 inches, 19 feet 10 inches long, 8 feet wide, and 8 feet 6 inches tall. And so we can actually do this real easily. Rather than having to worry about converting units in Blender, let's just go over to the scene buttons here and change the units to imperial. And this way, we can actually work in inches and feet pretty easily. So if we hit N to bring up our properties panel, let's select our cube here and we can see the dimensions that we have. Currently, it's 2.187 yards in each direction. Well, so let's first, this goes X, Y, and Z. So along the X-axis, which is our width, let's just put in 8 feet. And that'll transfer over real quick, comes out to 2.667 yards. And remember, a yard is 3 feet, so that's right. Then along the Y-axis, which is our length, let's put this at 19 feet and 8 inches. Or excuse me, 10 inches. Just like that. And then the height of our container is going to be 8 feet 6 inches. There we go. And so that works just perfectly. So now you can see that this looks great as our dimensions. Let's go ahead and hit Tab to go into edit mode. And what we're going to do, just so we have the ground plane at the floor, we're just going to hit G and Z and then just move this up until it's right level with the ground plane. And so then we can just move this up another 3 right here. And you can see that each one of these is a foot. So if you count, this is divided by 12. So we got 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, and so on. So this will work very, very well. Now, I realize that we have on Blender Cookie a lot of people from Europe and across the world that most of you probably use the metric system and think that the English system is retarded, and well, you can know that I agree with you. But since the dimension's already in that from the references that I found, we're going to go ahead and use that. I know the metric system makes a lot more sense and it's a lot easier to use, but so be it. So go ahead and I'm going to just hit N and T to close my properties and my toolbar panel. And let's hit Tab to leave edit mode. And we're going to use this just as our reference object for scale. And so I'm actually going to go to the object data buttons, and underneath the display, I'll just toggle down these items. I'm going to change the type over to wire. So now even when I'm in shaded mode, it shows up as just a wireframe. And so what this really allows me to do now is first just add in the other objects and just have this displayed over them like a wireframe. Allows me to just then trace the objects with it. So the first one that I want to do is to go ahead and create the back panel. And the back panel is one that you can see. I'll just bring this image over. You can see it right here. So it's pretty simple. We just have these square ridges, and if we count, we can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of these ridges. And so let's go ahead and create them. Let's hit Shift A to add in a new mesh. We'll add in a plane. On this plane, let's hit Tab to go into edit mode, and then just hit G and Z, pull this up. Let's line up this bottom view ridge right with the edge here. I'll just select this edge, and I'm going to move it up right to this line. And since it's not the right scale, I'm going to hit Shift S, and I want to do selection to grid, and that will just snap it right to the grid lines. We'll do the same thing over here. So Shift S and selection to grid. We'll just snap those together, and we can see that this one right here is 3 inches over from this line, and this one over here is 3 inches over from this line. And so now we have a nicely lined up system. Okay, now we don't have the dimensions for all these different things, but that's okay. We just want to be sure that we keep everything nice and locked to the grid, as it will make our life much, much easier. Okay, so let's go ahead and make this tall enough. So we're just going to take this right up to the top, about like this, and then we can zoom in a little further and take it down a bit. And you'll notice that we want to bring it down maybe about 1.5 inches from the top, and maybe about 3 inches from the top, and maybe 6 inches from the bottom or so. And so, we can adjust these as we go, but we just want to get a general starting point. And so we'll take this up 6. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. There we go. And then from the sides, we want to bring it in, if we're making this, we'll bring it in about 4 inches there. So we'll just hit S and X and then scale this over. We can hold down Shift, bring it in to be right there. And then we maybe need to go ahead and hit Shift S, and actually all of it, Shift S and selection to grid. And that will just snap all of those right to the grid lines. Works very easy to just adjust the scale just like that. Now what we're going to do is just hit Control R, and since we had 8 of these ridges here, we need to go ahead and add in 16 loops so we can then extrude from those. So we'll just add these in. And I've got my interface messed up a little bit. And what this has to do, at least on my system, has to do with using the overlap window draw method underneath the system. So if I just change this over to automatic and then roll my mouse over it, it fixes immediately. It doesn't always do that, but if you're experiencing that kind of error, go ahead and try adjusting your window draw method under your system in the user preferences and see if that fixes it. So I'm going to go ahead and go in, and here's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Okay, and now if I select every other one here, say 1 in face mode by hitting Control Tab, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. That gives me just enough to go ahead and extrude these out. So now I'll just hit E and extrude. And I'll go ahead and maybe take these out. These look to be about 1 inch deep. And so in vertex mode, I'll just extrude them out along the y-axis, just like that. Actually, I think I just did 2 inches, and I did. So I'll pull them out about like that. And now you can see what we have. So what I want to do now in edit mode, I first off realized that I extruded this the wrong way. So let's hit period to scale around the cursor. Then let's hit S, X, and -1, which will just flip it around. And then what we want to do is move this over to the back right here, and we can zoom in and snap it in to be right about there, such that this edge lines up with the outer edge here. And so from the top view, you can see how well that works. And let's maybe go ahead and take these back in a little bit further. Say we'll just go in 2 inches for the time being. We can always adjust them later on. So now that sets that up for us. Well, let's go ahead and do the sides now. Now the sides are shaped a little bit differently, as we can see in this reference. And so what I'm going to do, we can see that, we're going to assume that the spacing on these is pretty much the same. It's just that this front face is a little skinnier and the back is a little skinnier. And so we can take this same system that we have right here, which is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to hit comma, and let's just hit Shift D, right click to rotate, or to cancel or transform, and then we're going to hit R and Z to rotate around the Z axis -90 degrees, and then just G and Z and pull this over to right here. And what we want to do is pull this over such that it lines up right with the edge there, and then the same distance from here. This way we'll be able to put in that square pillar that we see right here, which looks to be, yeah, I believe it's perfectly square. And so we make this the same distance, which we can see is 4 inches, so we'll make this 4 inches as well, so we just need to slide this over 1, just like that. And then what we'll do is I'm actually going to just delete all of these ones here, so all but the first one. So we'll just hit X and delete, or yes, X and delete vertices. Now what I want to do is go ahead and, actually, no, I want to delete all but there. There we go. So hit X. There we go. X and delete vertices. And then I'm also going to delete this one here. So X, delete vertices. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this one. I'm going to go ahead and scale it in along the y-axis an inch from each direction, so we can see that if, well, it's not quite an inch, but to this line here. And then we'll take these ones out as well. And then what we want to do is also bring this one in the same distance. So let's undo this and hit S and Y, and then just notice down here in the bottom left corner the number that we're scaling. So if we scale this out to be right about there, we can see we're bringing it in 1.5. And so then let's take this in along the y-axis 1.5. And that's definitely the wrong way. So we can see, we'll just bring it in to right about here. And then we'll go ahead, we can hit Shift S, selection to grid, and then we'll grab each one of these as well, selection to grid. Okay, and we need to grab this one, and we'll just take all these actually. Selection to grid, and selection to grid. So really what this has done, apologies for the phone there, pause the recording real quick. My brother decided to untimely interrupt, but that's okay. So we're going to, really it's kind of got off track just a little bit, but what we want to do is make this distance the same as this distance, the same as this distance. And so this we can see is 4 inches, this we can see is 4 inches, and so then let's make this one 4 inches right there. So now this will repeat very nicely. So now that we have that, we can go and hit X and delete the vertices on that. So now I'm going to select this, I'm going to hit P and separate the selection. And the reason that I'm going to do this, after saving my file, is I'm now going to add in an array modifier on this. The array modifier, I'll just choose from here, array. I'm going to set it to a relative offset along the y-axis of 1, or that's 1 foot currently. And so let's see, we need to, how wide long is this? It's 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's 1 foot exactly. And so that should work to set it there. Although you can see it's going along the z-axis. So we need to hit Control A and apply the rotation such that it syncs correct or goes the right direction. And then let's just increase this such that it's going correctly. Take along this way. And I actually went too far. I keep snapping. Negative 1.5. It keeps jumping for some weird reason, but that's okay. There we go. And then I'll just take this down a number at a time. 1.1, 1.09. See, it's overlapping just a little bit, so we'll put that at 0.95. Should be just about right. Looks like 0.94. Close enough, and then we'll do merge and merge last as well. And then what we can do is just increase the count like this all the way along until it meets up right there, and that will be close enough. So then what we'll be able to do is add on this last 4 inches or so, such that it will be complete once we apply this. Okay, so now what I want to do is go ahead and add in a mirror modifier to this, and that will flip over to the other side, just like that. So now we've got both sides there, we've got the back here, and what we'll do now is let's go ahead and, well actually first let's go ahead and replicate the top system, or create the top system, and from, you know, this varies a little bit based on the container, but most of them that I've found have the same type of walls as the walls here. And so what we'll do is let's just hit Shift D, right click, delete the mirror modifier, hit Tab to go into edit mode, select everything, period to rotate around the cursor, and then hit R and hold down Control, and then just rotate around. Actually, that doesn't work very well. So what we'll do instead is let's center the cursor right here. We'll hit Shift S, cursor to selected, and then select everything, rotate around just like this, zoom in, snap this up to the top, and then drag this over along the x-axis to be about right there. Bring it into there, deselect this side, and bring that in 1 inch. And now we have the top system recreated just like that. Be sure to save our file. Now what I want to do after hitting Shift C to recenter my cursor is I want to go ahead and create these square columns in the center. And, you know, I can't tell exactly what they are, but let's make them 4 by 4. And then, of course, the whole height. So from front view, I'll hit Shift A, add a cube, hit Tab to go into edit mode, and then let's just scale everything down, and we'll make it 4 by 4. And so now I've scaled it down, so it's 4 by 4 by 4. We'll hit Shift S and selection and grid. That will just snap those up. And then we can move it over to one of the corners here. Snap to right there. And then from the side view, hitting 3 on the number pad, we'll go ahead and bring this over to the end over here. Take it up, deselect everything, hit B and box select to grab the top, and hit G and Z and take it up all the way to the top of our container. And that gives us the corner brick, although you can notice that we have these little blocks at the top, and those look to be about 4 by 4 by 3 tall. And so let's go ahead and select this, and we're going to go ahead and select everything, and then hit S and Z, take it down to the to be about 3 inches from the top. And you can see it doesn't quite snap right. This is one thing that I will notice when using the unit system, particularly the Imperial one, is that the snapping is really kind of messy. And so, you know, we're really just using it so that we can set up a good base system based on our current measurements. But it works really well if you just hit Shift S and selection and grid then to snap things back together. So just know that it's a little finicky. It's definitely not ideal. I do believe that the metric system in Blender behaves a little nicer, and so you may find yourself wanting to use that. But, you know, it's entirely up to you based on your results. And I'm gonna took that down too far. But just be aware of that so that you can counter it if need be. So now that I have that at the right height and position, I'm going to go ahead and go in and select it here, just the top. I'm going to hit Shift D, right click, and then P to separate the selection. Or actually, no, I'm not going to separate it yet. Instead, what I want to do is go to the top view and then deselect this top vertex here. Although actually, before we do that, let's hit Shift H to hide everything else. Let's select this vertex by hitting Shift S, or select it and then Shift S and cursor to selected. Because then we'll select everything, hit period, and then let's just scale out a fraction of an inch, say to about, right about in here. So it's just a little bit bigger. So I'm just holding down Control and Shift. And let's actually do that just one more notch, because then we'll hit G and Control and Shift and take it in a notch in each direction. And then maybe I'll recenter my cursor on that vertex and take it out another notch, holding Control and Shift. This way it doesn't line up perfectly with that one, and it's a little bit larger. Like we can see in the references, it tends to be just a little bit larger or a little bit smaller, you can see right there, and just gives us that extra bit of variety so that it doesn't look like one continuous surface. Now I can unhide everything, reselect this by hovering my mouse over it and then hitting L. and then I'll just hit E to extrude and take it up 3 inches. Okay, so with that, oh, and I want to go ahead and I'll select the whole pillar, hit Shift S and cursor to selection. Then I'll hit Control I to inverse my selection, hit Shift D, right click, and then S, Z, and -1, which will then just flip it around the Z axis and place another one at the bottom. So now I can go ahead and just add in my mirror modifier. And since I've got my origin point still locked right in the, oops, that's an array. I've still got it locked right in the center, I can go ahead and mirror it along the Y and the X axis, and it will just flip perfectly. But you'll notice something in that currently it's flipping along the Z axis when I tell it to be the Y. So we need to hit Control A and apply the rotation. And then it will immediately just flip over to the other side. There we go. Let's save everything. And then what I want to do is go ahead and add in these top rails. And these are going to be kind of L beams where from the side, you know, it looks like this. Or actually, here, I'll just use the grease pencil. By holding D, it looks like this. So this would be the side here. And we can see this a little better if we just draw it right on here. And so it'll look like that. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and use one of our beams as the main, the first version. So I'll select it, deselect that part by hitting Shift L. I'm going to hit Shift D, right click, and P to separate the selection. I'll hit Tab to leave edit mode, and then select it, and hit Tab to go back in edit mode. Let's now rotate everything 90 degrees, and then I want to hit G and Z and just pull it up this way. I also want to turn off the Y mirroring and enable the Z mirroring such that it mirrors this way and then that way. But then something that I need to do if I'm going to do that is to recenter my origin point. So let's not worry about the Z mirroring for the time. Well, actually, no, we don't want to do the Z mirroring because this is actually going to be a little different down here. So let's just work with it just like this. So I'm just going to grab this side, pull it over, snap it right to here. I'll just take it in approximate, and then we will snap this to the grid here momentarily. You can scale everything down to be our, let's make this let's see, these were 3 inches, so we'll make this 1.5 inches. So we'll scale it down. Oops, I want to scale towards the individual center. There we go, so I just hit comma. I'm going to deselect the top portion by Shift right clicking on them, Shift Alt right clicking on them. And then I'm going to take this up even further to be right about there. Let's select everything, and oh, from the front view as well, we also need to adjust this. And so let's take, or actually that lines up pretty much with that. And so if we look at this from the front top view, that should be good. So what I want to do is select everything and Shift S and selection to grid. Oops. But you need to be sure that if you're going to do that, scale into the right grid units. So now Shift S and selection to grid. Now we lost our 1/2 inch, so we need to go ahead and just take that up, hit G, and let's see if we do, we should be able to do 0.5 inches. And nope, that's not going to work. Yeah, because it doesn't, the transform point doesn't use that very well. And so we're not actually able to do that. So we'll just take it up by hand right to about right there. And you'll notice that this transform is still in millimeters. And I think that's part of the reason that it doesn't quite work, is that it's using 2 sets of transform types. So we'll just take that right up to be about 1/2 inch. Okay, hit in. And now we've got this across the x-axis. We can see that we need to pull the sidewalls up a little bit. So we'll just go into edit mode, select the top, and just take it up 1 inch. And now that snaps in very nicely. Oh, actually we can see that we need to take it still further. We'll just go ahead and go up, and it's okay if we intersect there because it's never going to show. And then you can see maybe we need to bring the sidewalls in just the littlest bit. So let's select these two, pull them in just a little bit so that we see this slight overhang that we're getting there. That works really well. Then we need to go ahead and add in one of these panels for the top. So I'm going to hit Shift D on the whole object, turn off my mirroring. So I'm just going to delete the mirror modifier, hit Tab to go into edit mode. And actually, let's hit Tab to leave edit mode first. Hit Shift S or Shift C to recenter the cursor. And then we'll hit Tab, period, to rotate around the 3D cursor. And then hit R, Z, and let's do negative 90 degrees. Sorry, just regular 90 degrees. And then we'll just hit G and Z, pull this over. Let's go ahead and scale it in along the x-axis, right about like this. And then we'll scale it in just a little bit further. Let's go ahead and grab these edges. We'll pull them in, select everything, and Shift S and selection to grid. Go to side view here. Quick shortcut, you'll notice when we're working on an elongated object like this, when we switch views, it's very easy to lose track of our object. So if you switch views and say you can't find your object like this, but you have something selected, just hit the period or the dot on your number pad and it will zoom to your selection. So now we can see we need to go ahead and pull this up the 1/4 inch. So what I'm going to do now, so it's such that it's even with this, I'm going to hit Shift Tab to enable my snapping, and you can hear my dog in the background there. My dog is a Siberian Husky, and for any of you that have ever had a Husky or spent some time around them, you know that they like to talk, so they don't really bark like normal dogs. They make all kinds of talking sounds. But getting back to our shipping container, I've enabled snapping by hitting Shift Tab, and then I'm going to hit Control Shift Tab to choose the snapping type. And for those of you that don't like the hotkeys or have trouble following them, remember that all of these are available down here. So here we can enable the snapping, and here we can choose our snapping type. So I'm going to choose Vertex. I'm going to hit G, Z, and then just snap right to this one here, which is the previous or the side view. And so now that'll be the exact same height. You can also notice that when we do that, we need to extend the walls over a little bit, namely the ceiling. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit Tab to go into edit mode on the ceiling. I'm going to hit G and Z and pull it back. Or actually, let's go ahead and grab. I'm going to first switch my snap type back to increment. I'll hit Shift Tab, and then let's go ahead and pull it back, say 2 inches, and that will just take it into the wall there. We can look at the other side, and if we go ahead and go back, say another inch, and then increase the count 1 more, well, no, we're going to have to just do some manual adjustments when we get to this point, but that's okay. You know, that's pretty much expected. But just so that they're even, I'm going to go ahead and do this on the wall as well. So just take this back 2 inches. There we go. And so that way we can ensure that everything's covered. And then we'll worry about the front here when we get to it. So this gives us our blocks here. We've got the sides. Now let's do one last thing before calling this portion quits. That'll put us right at about 30 minutes. And that is just to create this bottom panel right along here. And basically, this is going to be kind of we can see a good view of it right there. Again, from the front view with a grease pencil, it's basically going to look like this. And then this will be the negative space on there. So we'll just do this real quickly. We'll go ahead and remove that grease pencil. The grease pencil is very handy for doing things like that. And then something else that you'll notice with this is that this, find another view here, this panel right here actually comes all the way down a little further back to where the block is right now. The blocks go all the way down, so let's go ahead and take these all the way down right there. And then we actually have another piece that merges right there that's just like the top. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's just grab these pieces here and mirror it, or we'll just go ahead and actually what we'll do is we're going to mirror along the z-axis, but what we'll do is let's just choose a mirror object. So we'll hit Shift A and add in an empty. On this empty then, if we just set this as the mirror object from right here, we can then just go ahead and move this around, which you can see right there. Hit Control A, apply the rotation on here. We want the z-axis pointing up, I do believe, so we'll hit R, Y, and negative 90 degrees. There we go. Now the z-axis is pointing up, and let's also go ahead and rotate around the z-axis 90 degrees. There we go. Now it's orientated right. And now we can hit G and then just pull this up until it's correct. So we'll just zoom in, pull that down to right about there. And you can see maybe we need to go ahead and let's get our good view so we can see this here. So maybe we need to bring this down to right about there. And then we need to go ahead and bring our walls down a little bit. And it's okay if we go ahead and intersect right there. And there we go. So this allows us to put in that bottom panel now. So the bottom panel, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate the side walls. So I'll hit Shift D, right click. Let's disable the Z mirror on this. We can go ahead and leave it mirrored around the empty if we want, but let's go ahead and remove this just to be safe. And we'll hit Tab to go into edit mode, select everything, G and Z, pull it down here, and then let's pull it down to be right. Let's see, here we go. Pull it down to right there. And then what I'm going to do is first, if we look at this, oh, and actually I did this wrong. What we want to do is we only want this beam along the back, this side beam, only to be along the back. So let's remove the Z empty there, select this back one here, and add in the mirror modifier, which will then disable the x-axis, enable the Z, and go ahead and mirror it across that empty. And you can see we need to bring this back wall down. So we'll select it, pull it down along the Z-axis to right there. And that now looks good. And then this one here, this newly created bracket. So to create this L bracket, what we're going to do is in edit mode, let's just select this vertex here, hit X and delete the vertices. And then we'll select this sign. We're going to go ahead and pull it in 2 inches, then select the bottom and pull it in. And we'll just take it down to right there and then hit Shift S and selection to grid. And then the important thing to realize is that we're doing this all in wireframe mode. Since I have the back face colon enabled right here, I'm unable to select anything behind my current view. With that then created, just basics, let's go ahead and adjust the walls again. And so we'll just bring this right down 1 inch to right there. And then let's select this bottom piece. And then the way that we're going to thicken this is let's just add in a solidify modifier. So leaving edit mode, add in a solidify modifier. And then you can see we need to do a couple things on this. First off, we need to do even thickness, and that will improve that. And then just to ensure that everything looks good, let's also turn on high quality normals. And then this actually looks just about perfect. Although let's go ahead and take, well, that ought to be about 1/4 inch really. And so let's maybe take this down a little bit to be right about there. And there we go. So that allows us to create that bracket very, very easily. Something we'll do too is let's just go ahead and replicate or duplicate the floor, this down to the floor. And well, actually the floor is going to be flat. So let's hit Shift A, add in a mesh and a plane. On this plane, we'll go into edit mode, S and X to scale along the X-axis to right about here, and then go along the Y-axis to right about here, and then we'll hit Shift S and selection to grid, and that will just snap that together very nicely. And then what I want to do is from the front view, I'm going to go ahead and pull it up to be right about there. This way there's some clearance. And on the front view here, or along the front, we're going to go ahead and pull this in to be right about there. Now we're not going to do anything else with the floor right now, but we're just going to use it as a placeholder to keep us in line as we go along. So just taking one last look at our references, we can see along the back we need to add in this extra plate right there. And so let's go ahead and do that. What I'll do is I'm just going to duplicate this, then I'm going to delete the mirror, hit Tab to go into edit mode, select everything, pull it down along the Z-axis, and then we're going to pull it up. And then we can go ahead and decrease the depth, take it down, Shift S, selection and grid. and take it back up the 1 inch. And then looking at this, we can see that it needs to be inset just a little bit. So we'll take this in along the y-axis about to right there. And that will put in that plate for us. Now, if we look at this on the front view, we find the view of the door, we can see that we also have that same basic plate. So we'll go ahead and just mirror it across the y-axis. Oops, that was it. There we go. So we'll mirror this across the y-axis. Just like that. There we go. And so that's it. This is all we're going to do for this first section. This puts us, just over 30 minutes, but gives us a really good starting point. So from here, what we've got to do is block in the door, do the hinges and all that kind of stuff, and then we're going to do a full detail pass and take everything up and finish off with some really good hard surface modeling. We'll add in subsurface modifiers to make it really nice, high poly, and smooth, and we'll really take it up a notch. But right now, this is a good stopping point while we're doing the blocking in stage.